Okay, everybody, thank you so much for being so patient with us today. We really want to start this event, Winterize My Tiny, just to sort of help everybody learn from the experts about what that takes. We're having some connection issues with Facebook. We're definitely live on YouTube, so everybody just sort of head on over to YouTube. It seems to be the best connection, and just hopefully you can bear with us as we go through this event. So I just want to introduce the host for this event. Adrienne Fedrigo. She is the Vice President of Tiny Home Alliance Canada, and she also has lived in a tiny home for several years. So not only is she a host of this event, but she has just as much experience as everybody else. So with that, let me give you Adrienne Fedrigo.
Great. Hello, everyone. I will be your host today, which I'm greatly looking forward to. Winterizing your tiny is something that's incredibly important. We've had some struggles in our journey, so I'm excited to hear how, even us having been in a tiny house for a couple of years can improve our winter. So today I have Barb Rowe and Pamela Robertson with us. Barb lives in Southern Alberta and has been in her tiny home for 3 years. So she actually moved in December. So we're interested to hear a little bit more about how that went. Jumping right in there. And she also lives in a very cold and windy climate. So it'll be, again, more interesting to hear how she deals with the cold fairly consistency. Alberta's, I think you only get summer for about 8 weeks. So you definitely need to be prepared for all types of weather all the time. And Pam is the owner and a primary builder with Sunshine Tiny Homes. She's out on Vancouver Island, so a little warmer than Alberta, but does have its fair share of different climates and whatnot. And her clients are all across Canada, so she has built for the different areas that her houses are going to. She has a passion for tiny homes and the affordability piece and the housing shortages. So she's doing her part to help put roofs over people's heads and giving them that option. So we look forward to hearing from you guys today. And I guess if Barb would like to take a couple minutes to introduce herself and a little bit more about her space.
Okay. My name is Barbara. I've been part of Tiny Home Alliance Canada since about 2019, when about a month before I moved into my tiny house. I live in Lethbridge, southern portion of Alberta. And I moved into my house in December, and I was really lucky because it wasn't that cold yet. It was probably only about -5 Celsius, so it was okay. And I still had a bit of time to prepare for the winter, and I figured I can get away with this winter and maybe not have to winterize or do anything spectacular for my tiny. And then end of January rolled around, and it went down to -42 with a wind chill of -56, and I had a wake-up call, like a huge wake-up call. So yeah, winterizing your tiny, get it done before you're standing outside in minus whatever weather, freezing your butt off, trying to put something up. It's not fun. Not fun.
Nope.
No.
All right. And Pam, if you could give us a little introduction on your business and building tinies for the winter.
Yeah, so I founded Sunshine Tiny Homes in 2018, and I also came on with the Tiny Home Alliance of Canada at pretty much a couple of months into the debut of my company. So big advocate for tiny homes all across my municipality, the province, and our nation. So I like to impart information whenever I can. So I build tiny homes. We do a fairly personalized approach to our tiny home building. And we work with people all over BC in, colder climates. I just went to the Tiny Home Show in Ancaster, Ontario, and was really educated well and talked primarily a lot about cold weather, how to combat some of that stuff. But what I like to do as a builder, I like to look at it in the planning stage. So when we do build for people, we look at where their tiny home could go. Potentially, or where it is going to land for the longer term. We went through one of my clients ended up selling her tiny home, moved to Ontario. And if we had known that Ontario was going to be on the map for her when we did the initial building, we definitely would have put in all the structural necessities in order for her to be able to just tow her home across Canada. So, now having had that experience, I take and what we learn, and I try to put it into, moving forward with each build. So we've just been building, multifacets. And so I feel like the time that I spent in Ontario, I learned a plethora of different things, primarily because they get really cold weather there as well. So, yeah, so I want to be able to, if I have any information other than what, our wonderful tiny home dwellers have experienced, I'm all for it. So helping people help people, I guess is what you'd say. Yeah, thanks.
So Barb, when you were planning your tiny home, did you work with your builder on speaking about what type of environment and climate you would be in and how they would adapt that to the house to make sure that you stayed, winter ready?
That's a good question. Because the builder is actually right in Lethbridge, I was really lucky. So she asked about where I was going to be parked, and all I kept saying is in the mountains, because that was where I wanted to be. I'm not quite there yet, but she knew that winters was going to be tough. I think their normal building is that they spray foam top, sides, and bottom for everything. So everything is really, really well insulated. The one thing that I definitely wanted, though, was a fireplace in my place, just in case I needed an alternative heating source. But yeah, talking about, I wanted to make sure that, I know she knows this, but I'm like, okay, you have to make sure everything is nailed down because we have 120 km/h winds on a normal day. And that's kind of what will kill you in the wintertime as well, is that wind. But I don't really remember talking about anything specific about planning for the winters, but yeah, I'm not really sure. That's a good question. Very good question. I have to think back.
So Pam, when you're working with your clients, then what types of, well, I guess, how to understand the climate that they're going to be, and then how does that impact the way that you will build for them?
So how we kind of approach building for tiny homes is looking at region and looking at weathers, and the other is because I really feel it's important if ever, when the tiny home industry advances and there is a level of legalization involved, there's going to be some things in particular, I believe, that building inspectors and whatnot are going to be looking for. So when we do build, we build to right now, because we're in BC, we build to the BC building code or the national building code. Wherever we can implement those types of codes, we do. Like Barbara said, we basically, what we're doing primarily is filling our walls with spray foam. So we actually get an R value you would in a home. So before, we were building to the RV codes, it wasn't needing a high level of density for that insulation factor. So we get like an R20 in the walls, R30, 35, even 40, we could go in the ceiling and the undercarriage, which is really important. Looking at things like triple glazed, like triple glazed windows. So you have that added additional insulation factor in your windows. Looking at the fact that all of these additional, insulation factors will also add to the weight of your home distributively. So we look at all of those kind of factors as well. And, I think that moving, like I talked with Acorn Tiny Homes, and he seems to know quite a bit about the insulation factor. I've yet to research it. I'm a data miner, and if I don't think it's going to work, I'm not going to put it in my homes. One of the things that I've definitely been adamant about is never having bump outs or slide outs in my tiny houses. Primarily we live in a rainforest, so anything that has the ability to leak or water to penetrate. The other is that you lose a lot of heat, so there is no there's a lot of thermal bridging, and there's a lot of gaps and spaces where you're going to lose your heat loss, but so the insulation factor isn't there. So really looking at those really important aspects. I would go up to 2x6 construction and really fill my walls if I was going to say where you are with the minus 57 wind chill factor. That's cold, Barbara. That's cold. But knowing that, you know, I used to work in the Northwest Territories where we were in, you know, minus 50s with the wind chill. Minus 44 was actually the coldest that I've been in, and that was without the wind chill factor. But it was a dry cold, so it wasn't as damp and as chilling as we get cold here, right? So our minus 15 is the equivalent to minus 44, because I'd be out in minus 20 in the Northwest Territories in a sweatshirt, right? So it just depends. But looking at all those factors are and building those in at the very beginning is very important. Yeah.
It's very important for you to have those warm walls and those barriers to the wind.
Yeah. One more quick thing I wanted to mention in the design phase is, and it was actually brought to my attention last weekend because they got such heavy snow loads. I don't think Alberta gets a massive compaction and a thick quantity of snow, but snow loads and your, you know, 12 to 1.5 pitch roof, it's actually not very good. See, actually, that's why you see like A-frames and like aspens and things with a really high pitch slope. So what I would also look into is factoring in your slope of your roof, right? Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, oh, sorry, Barbara, are you going to add about insulation and roofs?
No, I was just agreeing. We don't really have heavy, wet snow. It is a really dry climate here in Alberta. We have dry heat, dry cold. And yeah, having a pitched roof makes a huge difference. I definitely have a peaked roof.
Yeah.
I could have went for like what do they call it? A garden shed with one side shed roof. And I'm like, no, let's do it a peaked roof. And then that way takes care of the snow load and the snow just falls right off.
Perfect.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. Barb, do you want to talk a little bit about how you how you have water coming through during the winter? Because there's lots of concerns about either freezing pipes, kind of water coming in and going out. So what kind of things do you do to make sure that your water is flowing?
Okay, so right now I live at a campsite. So I have a hydrant hookup for my water. So I have to make sure that the hydrant has heat tape wrapped around it properly and it's insulated so it doesn't freeze. Because if it is going to freeze, it's going to be where everything is connected. So where my hose connects up to the hydrant, that's where it's going to freeze. And all I have is a heated garden hose. You can buy them at UFA or an RV place, whatever. And then, so that gets definitely plugged in as soon as it gets down to -5. And then my water, where it comes into my house, is actually underneath the house. I don't have, like in a regular RV, your hose intake would be onto the side of the unit. Mine comes in onto the bottom. So when I have everything skirted, I just run my hose underneath and coil it around to keep it all warm. And then it actually helps to heat the underside of the house as well, because it does actually radiate a lot of heat. And then I make sure that I've just got a couple pieces of insulation where the hose actually connects to the house to help keep it secure. And then it's definitely one of those things that you have to check. It's not plug and play and leave for months. It's you go out once every couple of days and you just do a quick look underneath to make sure there's no frost buildup. There's no leaks in your skirting or whatever you have. Just make sure that nothing freezes, because once it's frozen, the people that own the campsite, the managers, they said if the hydrant gets froze, then the only way to unfreeze it is they have to take a torch and heat it up that way. And then that means your hose gets burnt and melts, and then you're out of hose. So make sure that you keep track of those things, and all your connections are secure and wrapped, or else you'll find out the hard way. Definitely.
And Pam, I noticed you shaking your head about the water coming in from the outside. So that's
Yeah.
how our tiny house is built. Our hose connects on the outside, and there's no protection around it, and it freezes every winter. So
Yeah.
I'm
So
interested to hear how you guys do that.
Yeah, so we've never put them on the exterior up above. It's always been on the underside. So it is protected with the skirting, and the logic behind that is you only really have 2 feet that you need to be concerned about your exposure of your line. So it is beneficial to run your water underneath and have it buried. Obviously, it's going to have a better life. The farther down it's buried, the less frost it's going to be exposed to. But the other is, you know, what I suggest to people who have your infrastructure is to build a little boxed house. And have it be, you know, like an insulated box, and just, you know, encase it, and just create a little house for it. I'm going to let you know that even just having a light on in areas generates enough heat to keep things sometimes from freezing. So not maybe in like the dead of the cold winter, but you know, one of the funniest conversations I had, because we always talk about excrement when it comes to tiny homes. And when I was at the tiny home show, there was this wonderful woman. I believe her name was Jo. She flew from Australia for the event. Okay. And she brought her loo with her, which is a composting toilet. Beautiful composting toilets. I'll make sure that Frank gets the link, but they're actual porcelain composting toilets. And her composting toilets sit, you know, the beautiful porcelain like you have. Toilets aren't beautiful, but you can make them, you know, aesthetically pleasing. So she designed a porcelain composting toilet that basically has a hole that goes and it screws into your compost, which is below your tiny house in your skirted undercarriage. So it actually passes through. And what the concern was that it would freeze, right? Like it would be exposed to the elements, and they basically solved the problem by putting a light bulb in the compost bucket area. So, I mean, there's ways that you can combat things, but I thought that was pretty ingenious. And I actually really like their toilets. And I think I will suggest to somebody moving forward, you know, to try them out. Primarily because you don't have your byproduct inside your home. It's outside of the home, and it closes off, and it's actually a really cool system. So I can't remember exactly what it's called. So my apologies, but not with LEDs, with regular, you know, good old fashioned light bulbs. Yeah. But LEDs actually do generate quite a bit of heat that I've noticed. They're not really supposed to, but in my experience, they do. So I just think that's kind of odd, but yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So we've got water coming into the house that isn't freezing, so that's great. How do we keep our other pipes from freezing? Because we've also had that issue where we haven't been able to drain any water for quite a while because they've been frozen as well. So what kind of tips are there or what can we do to make sure that those aren't freezing?
Good question. So you're talking about your drainage, right?
Drainage, yeah.
Your drainage pipes, yeah. So I think go ahead, Barbara.
So, okay, I was just going to say, I guess it would just depend on how your wastewaters, or if you have a black, how that gets drained out and where it gets drained out from. I guess.
Well, I guess, Barb, can you chat a bit about your system?
So for me, I opted out of I have a gray tank, but I don't have a black tank. I have a composting toilet. So solids get taken out in the trash for now. And then I will, you know, dig a hole and compost my waste that way. But I have a gray tank that hangs slightly below the frame of the trailer, and the builder wrapped it around with heat tape. And I just have to plug it in to make sure that it stays warm enough. But I have like a regular sliding 3-inch valve that you have to slide open and close to empty out that tank. I think it's about, I want to say it's about 65 liters or something like that. So I have to empty it every day and a half type thing. But without the heat tape, I'm sure it would freeze up like a solid block of ice. The biggest thing you can do that we sort of touched on and off a little bit is skirting. It's if you need to keep the floor warm, and any exit points for your water and entry points and stuff, like just like Pam said, build a little box for the entry points in, but for your exit points, yeah, definitely keep those warm. And if you have to build some sort of a box to insulate it until it gets out of the house and then do whatever you do with it, that will definitely make a huge difference.
Yeah, so we don't put holding tanks in our houses. It's just a straight pipe with a grade. So what naturally would do is nothing would be sitting in any of the lines. So I don't think there's a grave concern. If there was ever was like a massive concern, you could always, you know, make sure that you had a temperature to your water, so it's like not flash freezing on the way out. But other than that, yeah, it would be the same as what Barbara said for heat trace. Heat trace is a wonderful thing, but I really take value in getting proper insulated skirting. So one of the methodologies that I describe to my clients, we don't offer skirting packages just because wherever you put your home, there's always going to be grade and you know, surface issues. So instead of trying like to fit square pegs in round holes, it just always recommend that you have somebody in your region come out when your house is landed. But my suggestion or recommendation is to, if you can, get some really good insulated rigid foam, or, you know, if you want to get super fancy, you can build little boxes and have plywood on both sides, but before you close it in, you could spray foam, right? So there's a lot of really robust things that you could do for your skirting versus just putting a sheet of metal around your house, or, you know, some corrugated whatever metal or plastic. So there's a lot of different things that you could do to really lend a robust sort of insulated factor to the underside of your home, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, we definitely found that skirting was important, and we've had a few different types around our house, but even last year it's just that like silver kind of insulation that we found at Rona and stapled it to the house, and even as soon as we put that on, it was like a huge difference. You could feel it in the floor. So it doesn't really prevent, well, we have a weird kind of gray water system, so that's why we're getting issues, but yeah, insulating definitely helps there for sure. Now, Pam, can you chat a bit, because you build to an RV standard, are you able to put in a fireplace or anything like that during your builds?
So for the RV series, the wood burning fireplaces, is what you're mentioning?
Well, just any type of fireplace, yeah.
Yeah, so we do propane. So we do propane insert or freestanding, so they look like gas or wood fireplaces, right? We have put a wood burning fireplace in, but we build, you can do that with the Park Model series, which is the 10-foot wide, but no loft. So it's kind of like a, and we just experimented last year, and we built actually a tiny home under the manufactured home certification. So it actually is a 10-foot wide, 40-foot long gooseneck on a chassis. Yeah, it was a completely off-grid tiny home, so it was completely sovereign. It actually doesn't have capabilities to tie to the grid. And we put a more so wood stove with a Dickinson propane backup heater, so that, you know, that take the chill off if it didn't run all the way through the night. Yeah, so that was really, really fun. We got to put the wood stove in, and the clients seemed to love it. So yeah.
Is that a popular option usually, people wanting fireplaces, either wood or propane?
Yeah, actually it seems quite popular. You know, with both of those, they do take up a lot of landscape. They need a lot of, like, your wood stove needs quite a bit of clearances, not in the back behind per se, like we can get it, I think it's about 7 inches from the wall and any sort of surfaces on either side, but the front, right? And my concern was we were building for brand new baby boy twins. And so, they're going to have to put, some sort of cage around, which is going to encroach into their space. So that's going to make things a little tight for a little while until they're old enough to, like, but we did raise it up off the ground a little bit. So it wasn't like right there, crawling distance, that kind of thing.
Perfect.
Yeah, lots of fun. What we will do, because of the fact that we can't put the wood stoves in, but we will definitely, if there's, post warranty, when you take your home away and we've gone through all the warranties and, your home is yours, you do with it what you will. And so if we know ahead of time, we'll design it in the location and, specifically a model we'll build around, and you guys can do that install at your leisure whenever. So it's not a no, we just can't do it. It doesn't work in our realm, but we do know, like, we have 2 that are going off grid, and it's just nice. They live on 160 acres. They have all of the resources of wood burning, at their fingertips, and so, it makes sense for them to have a wood burning stove in their tiny. So they'll put them in, post delivery whenever they want to. When you do that, if you're still under warranty, we will not warranty the home if you do sort of things. So that will be something that you need to talk to your builders about, just because it's not something that is what we didn't install it, right? So if you modify your home in any way, specifically like those kind of things, that voids your warranty for sure.
Okay. And Barb, how do you keep your internal environment warm during the winter?
Well, as Pam was mentioning, they do fireplaces and park models. So mine is considered a park model because I'm 10 wide, I'm 37 long. So I did this, and it was registered as a park model, RV, because that's how we have to do it here in Alberta. But yeah, that fireplace, as soon as it gets down to -10, that fireplace is about cooking almost every day. Yeah. I have a supplier that I go and pick up a truckload of wood and I stock it up. And yeah, if I get home from work and it's a little chilly, then that fireplace is going. Other than that, I have a forced air furnace. It's just a small RV furnace that supplements the rest of my heat for the rest of the time. During the daytime when I'm not home, I usually put the heat down a little bit, but I've got really, really big windows. You can't see them because my camera's facing behind. I've got really, really big windows. So sun comes up and my house is facing south, and those windows catch all the light, and it can get actually pretty warm in here. So I'm definitely trying to use, passive solar heating as well to do that. But yeah, furnace and the fireplace is my main source. Propane, definitely.
Yeah, perfect. And why did you choose a wood fireplace over a propane or other source?
At the time of building, it was just a few years after the big Waterton Kenow fire that happened in 2018. And I was really concerned because a lot of the people down in Waterton National Peace Park that borders the United States, a lot of those people were evacuated and they had power cut off. And I thought, you know what, if my power ever gets cut off, I need to have something else. If I'm not evacuated, but the power gets shut off, my furnace won't work. So how am I going to stay warm? So I'm like, okay, we need an alternative. And I said, okay, I have to have a fireplace. That was a stipulation. That was one of the things that I said it has to happen because I don't want to die. I don't want to die of cold, and somebody has to pry my keys out of my dead hands because I'm frozen in my tiny house because I have nowhere to heat it or anything. So I figured fireplace it is, definitely.
And I guess, Pam, with your clients, which way do you sway them? Either wood, propane, or really just depends on their climate?
Well, our standard home comes with electric, so it's an inconspicuous kick space heaters. We have 2 dispersed. I do like to recommend, like, if they're going to be an on-grid, to have some sort of off-grid capabilities in case, like Barb said, the power gets shut off. So most of the propane appliances that we have, they have like either an electronic ignition, which generally comes with a battery. So the only thing that's running off of electricity would be, say, the fan. But when my clients do get, say, a propane operated fireplace, you can get one that's like cast iron, and it's operated by propane. It's electronically started by battery, remote, and so you don't need electricity. And the other suggestion that I make are those cast iron or the metal whirliburts. So that actually becomes an automatic fan. So it actually is heat activated. So you can get your heat distributed throughout your house. So there's a lot of like little ways that you can go about getting and achieving the goal. The Dickinson marine heaters are not, they can be electronically activated, but it's generally just to turn them on. And I believe they have a battery backup system. A lot of things that look like they need to be plugged in primarily for the fan, like your separate composting toilet, but you can still operate your toilet without the battery power. So yeah, there's a lot of different things that you could implement in your house for an alternative heat source. Yeah.
Pam, I have a
yeah.
question for you. You said you have 2 electric heaters. How come you don't how come you have electric and not a different way of heating, like a propane forced furnace or something like that? Why electric?
I've never really explored the forced furnace heating. I've demolished a lot of RVs, and I haven't really liked what I've seen in their ducting systems. You know, if things go, you know, wrong or whatever, there's I'm what I'm assuming is they're built into the floor. I'm really not understanding how you can get maximize all of your space if you're going to be running all of this ducting. So I just don't know where it's ran. So I really haven't explored that much. When you say that you have an RV, is it adequate with an RV heating system? Because, you know, tiny homes are generally quite large. And I know that you can get your ducting up in different regions. We just have one sort of kick space heater in the general space and one in the wherever the rooms are separated, right? So we have a flex room that's off the bathroom, so we would put the heating back there. We actually have clients that want in-floor heating. We're experimenting with some of those types of activities. We're actually working with a company that says, you know, you can use the in-floor heating as a primary heat source. But the in-floor heating, for me, I would err on the side of caution of that, because with in-floor heating comes a concrete skim coat that you need to implement. And what we've learned from the installers, it's a great way to heat your home. It would definitely be the primary heat source if it was installed properly. But if there's any interruption or upset and it cracks and it disconnects the line, there's no warranty. You're then scraping up skim coat concrete to find out where the critical error is, because, you know, it could break in a transportable home. With tiny homes, if you don't have it on a concrete slab, you're always going to have settling and you know, movement as you would in any other home. But generally they put it on concrete floors to, you know, take that edge off, and that's, concrete floors don't move. And so you just are running the risk of it, you know, potentially having an upset. So I like to see how things kind of play out after other builders implement, and then I will like adopt it after I've seen it for a while. I'd be interested to know how your forced air propane heater works. Yeah. How well it works for you.
It works actually really well. My floor, because it's a triple axle, so they actually built the floor up high enough that they ran all the ducting in. So I've got the skeleton of the trailer, the spray foam, and then that's where all the lines for water, gas lines, and then the ducting goes in. So, I mean, doing a quick count, I probably got 1, 2, 3, 4 ducts, 4 vents just in the living room, kitchen, one in the bathroom, and then one in the bedroom. So yeah, it's I don't want it super hot in my house either, so I keep it at like, I don't know, 18, 19 degrees. But like I said, I use the windows as well. But yeah, and my furnace is, I don't know, a small suitcase style. That's how big it is. And it's actually tucked underneath the stairs. So if I do need to service it, then I have ample room to service it at and stuff. So
right on.
it works actually pretty good. Yeah. I think the big thing is with when you look at an RV forced air furnace, they're actually, they work really well, except the RVs aren't airtight like tiny homes are. So you
Mhm.
lose a lot of your heats and your slides, your windows and everything else. But when you have a product like a tiny home
Yeah.
that's practically airtight, even a forced air furnace would be amazing,
Yeah.
because it
Did
would
you get
actually work.
did you get the HRV system installed as well? So do you have your air movement?
Um, yeah, it's I
The
can't
Luno?
remember the brand name of it. It's not a mini split type thing. I've just got two vents with
Yeah, the
fans on
Luno.
either end.
Yeah.
The Lunos, yeah, that's the one.
Good.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
I get
important.
to I get to listen to
Primarily,
that all night.
yeah, well, it's important because you have primary heat is propane. Propane is very humid. So what I
Yeah.
like to do is kind of reduce the humidity. So a lot of our standard tiny home purchasers, they're not getting the upgrades, and so they don't have the propane. Um, and so the electric without the HRV is better, just because it doesn't produce a humid heat. So that's kind of my reasoning behind it. But a
Okay.
lot of the places where the tiny homes go locally are in RV parks and places that supply the electricity. And honestly, I have propane heat. I have a propane gas stove in my house and a propane cooktop, an oven, and my propane is far more expensive than my electricity. So it just
Oh,
depends. Yeah, the propane has doubled in cost over the past year and a half or 2 years. So I'm just look at expenses primarily, right? So unfortunately, propane seems to be a bit higher than anticipated, but I'd also really recommend getting, paying the extra couple of bucks for a higher end unit, and low, like a low burning frequency. I don't know what the low emissions or whatever. So I feel like the propane fireplace that I have chews up a lot of gas unnecessarily. Energy efficient. That's the word I'm looking for. So, yeah,
and then I
cool.
guess it also depends on where your house is going too, as to how you want to heat it. If you're in a
Yeah,
humid climate like you guys are, you
yeah,
don't want more humidity with propane. Where we
yes,
are, it's so dry. It's you almost look for the propane with the humidity so you can actually, stay fluid.
yeah. No, that
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense.
yeah, that's interesting to
Thanks.
know. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
Mhm.
Mm.
Looking for, well, the climate in terms of the humidity or dry is important because we have quite a bit of humidity issues in our house. So I guess, is there some suggestions on, if you don't have the HRV and you don't have the other systems in place to help pull moisture out and you're using a lot of propane, as Pam, what's a good way to be able to help with that moisture control?
sure. So my clients actually installed them post build, one of them. So you can, it's low voltage, so you can, tie into something that's, kind of close by. I believe that they might have tied into like a light switch or something just to activate. I can't remember how they did it. But if you look it up, you might be able to put it in post build. The other is my first tiny home purchasers. We didn't even know about Lunos at that time. They have dehumidifiers that they've put into their like freestanding.
Yeah.
And the other is that dry soul or something it's called. So it's like that product you can get at Canadian Tire, and it's the stuff that absorbs the moisture in your air. But I really recommend the Lunos if you have a high humidity, just to kind of get those installed post build. Your builder or whomever put your home together should have pictures. If they don't, then it's, kind of like a hit and miss of any wires that you have in your wall. So be very strategic about where you place it. But yeah.
Okay. We've also done that. Yeah, moisture was a surprise for us our first year, and we have a skylight, so we leave that cracked open all winter to help with the moisture to escape. It doesn't help every time. Like, we have a lot of moisture. There's a lot of bodies in our house, so
Yeah. The other is
um,
to keep furniture away from your walls and let things breathe around. Yeah. One of the bigger, yeah.
And
So
then
we're
just stop breathing. You know, that helps to
Yeah.
cut down on breathing.
no,
Sleeping,
no
yeah.
cooking.
No breathing, no
No
sleeping.
breathing. Yeah. Mask. Yeah. No more.
Right. Yeah. Cool. I don't know if Frank's still here, if Rachel, if there's any other questions from the crowd, or if you guys have any other questions for each other between Barb and
We had one question. What would be the difference or the benefits versus insulating a home, tiny home with a gooseneck and one without a gooseneck? Is there any major difference to doing that? Being where the gooseneck has all that extra space underneath it where you're living.
Mhm.
Okay, so I have a gooseneck style tiny home, and my first year living in it, when it was -40 at end of January, when I was putting up 2-inch rigid foam insulation and taping it on the bottom of my tiny, it made, I didn't put any kind of insulation underneath the gooseneck. I just left it open, and it makes a huge difference. You definitely can feel it. So I have carpet in my bedroom, and that's where my bedroom is. I would get out and the carpet was cold in the morning, but then I'd come down the stairs into the rest of the house, and the floor was warm. So, or warmer, wasn't exactly warm, but it was warmer. So yeah, definitely you want to, whatever you need to do to put up some kind of insulation of some way, shape, or form, whether it's proper skirting, insulating, 2-inch rigid foam, whatever, anything you can do, it makes a huge difference. Like at least, I don't know, 5 to 10 degrees difference on how it feels on the floor on your feet.
What about Pamela? What about you, Pamela, as an expert builder? What would you suggest to somebody if they were
We,
asking you that question?
yeah, we elevated the subfloor on our gooseneck. So we had a higher R value because a lot of people frame, like we frame inside of our frame, the chassis. But with goosenecks, it's a little bit of a different kind of structure at the neck, at the gooseneck portion. So we doubled up. We lost a little bit of headspace, but we gained that insulation. We also double insulated. So we had like a where the gooseneck and the flat deck chassis meet. We actually built a little exterior cubby, but we double insulated. So the doors and the tiny home were insulated. So it acted as an exterior wall, but a double. And then of course we do suggest that you just skirt. A lot of people build in, so they'll like take opportunity and frame the gooseneck and use it as a storage room. But even when you frame it and just throw some insulation up, that starts to act as your skirting per se, but you end up using it as a storage facility, right?
Yeah, that is my garage, as I call it.
Yeah.
Underneath, that's where all the junk that I don't want people to see, that's where it's all hiding. So if anybody goes in there, they'd be like, holy cow, look at all that. Yeah.
And I hate to do this, but I do have to cut things short. I have to go. Is that cool with you, Frank?
Well, yeah, there doesn't seem to be too many questions coming in.
Okay.
So
I don't normally like to do this.
did you have any closing comments?
I just want to say thank you guys for joining us today and chatting about winter. It can be a bit of a surprise if you are not prepared for it. And even still, we've been in our house a couple of years, and every winter we seem to go through something. So always being prepared for the winter and having a builder and knowing the right questions to ask in the climate is very beneficial to mitigating some of those. And it's always great to hear lived experience. So thank you, Barb, for your experiences in your tiny home throughout the winter.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
See you.
Okay, bye.
Bye, Pam.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Pam.